Now, the meeting between the Nigeria Labour Congress and the federal government ended in a deadlock with another meeting scheduled for a later date. The Minister of Labour and Employment, Simon Lalong, is also expected to meet with the representatives of the Trade Union Congress led by its national president, Festus Osifo. Reports gather that following the NLC's threats of indefinite strike action over what the Labour Centre tagged as anti-poor policies propagated by President Bola Tinubu's led administration, Lalong invited the unionists to a meeting in his office in Abuja on Monday. To talk about this in-depthly, joining us virtually to discuss this is Charles Ideho, a public affairs analyst. Charles Ideho, good morning and welcome to VOP this morning.
Well, also, we have Cyril Abaku with us in the building to also chime in on this one. Welcome once again, Cyril.
Cyril, you're already welcome. You've been welcome to Money with Moses. However, Cyril, is it surprising to see that the government decided to have a conversation with Labour? You do know that Labour gave us a warning strike about last week for 2 days, 2-day warning strike, and they're complaining that the federal government seems not to be taking their plea seriously. You also have Joe Ajero, Festus Osifo, during the union meeting yesterday, talking about the fact that Labour on several occasions have put down what they asked the government to do for them. But up till now, they're still having conversations. The removal of fuel subsidy has had a major impact in the Nigerian economy and salaries are meant to be upgraded. Why is the government taking time to dialogue on this?
Well, anybody who has a history of how government and Labour have related in Nigeria will not be surprised by the outcome of yesterday's meeting. It's all deja vu. Usually it's at the last minute before the strike that perhaps you hear they now begin to meet into the night. You may hear that they started, they may say the meeting is for 12 or for 4, but they will never meet. They will tell them they are coming. They will keep them waiting until, say, 9, 10. And they begin to talk. All of those, for me, I think are just basically strategy to drag the matter. They will now start meeting into late morning or into the early hours of the morning. Maybe say 3, 4, sometimes even up to 6.
If Labour hadn't said they wanted to go on strike, would that conversation have been drawn?
Now, exactly. That was the first question I wanted to answer before you dragged it a bit long. The question is that I am not aware that the federal government is making any effort or in any way interested in either sitting with Labour, discussing the palliatives or the palliative issues, or because, for example, if you watch the federal government, they have already released money for palliatives. They have 2 billion naira, whether it's 2 or 5 million.
5, but 2.
5, but 2 billion in initial tranche, and then the 5 billion for what it is worth. The Minister of Finance has now come to some is loan, some is a grant. The states connubating Niger Republic. The argument that they brought up was that because of the unrest,
there might be an influx of people.
Yes, and so that they're going to give those states more money. Nobody knows how much more is. There should be transparency because it's not government money, it's Nigerians' money. We need to know. Nobody said you can't give them more if there's a problem. But why don't you tell us exactly what that more is? So this is where we are. I suppose that for fear of a strike, the federal government is now having to sit down with Labour to have this conversation. And for me, I think that there's a unique opportunity for the NLC, as for Nigerians, to make the most of these conversations. We said it time and again. If you took subsidy away 4 months ago, 4 months after, any meaningful, serious-minded, purposive government should have laid out its own plans and meet Labour in the middle of the road. That they failed to do this shows that there's no good faith on the part of government. Because initially it was between the government's team without a cabinet, the government's team led almost visibly by
special advisor
to the president at the time on communication strategy and special duties. De La Lake, all right, which was fair enough. He was the one who was always telling Nigerians whatever it was that was going on. There was an initial time frame for them to have the discussion. And then later on, they said, okay, call off the strike, and then let's talk again after 8 weeks. Those 8 weeks have since come and gone. that there was nobody should hide behind the issue of bureaucracy and statecraft. It's all a lie, because there was a whole lot of government did without a cabinet. All right, the government thought it was priority, and therefore they went ahead to do those things. Permanent secretaries were there. Government works, whether there's a cabinet or not. That there was no cabinet in the place, it was not the fault of Nigerians. It is entirely the president's politics. So that there was no cabinet when he made the policy pronouncement. So nobody can hide behind cabinet or no cabinet. It's not. Right. It's purely material. Right. Government chose to adopt a policy, but has failed through to properly, work out modalities on how it wants to address the fallout of that policy choices that made. Now, the reality is that perhaps, as far as government sees it, it has addressed the subsidy removal and palliative problems by doling out money to state governors without consultation, without any discussion. So, but the fact that Labour is saying that has nothing to do with us, we have come to discuss our own matter with you, the chief of which will be the minimum wage, imbroglio. Hopefully that is addressed, and then consequential adjustment and other things can also come to
be addressed.
Yes.
All right, so Charles, good morning once again, Charles. Now, Charles, this is Charles Adeho, who has joined us virtually. Now, Charles, how does the TUC's position in all of this affect NLC's position? Because TUC is saying they want to sit back and watch how the states spend the monies that have been given to them by the FG. NLC is insisting on going on strike. How does it affect one? How does one affect the other?
Okay, well, you're already sensing disunity within the labor movement, which is quite unfortunate. For me, labor movement died with Oshomole. It died with Oshomole, and I have every reason to so believe, because even before we were born, we heard stories of Michael Imodu, how they even were able to force the hands of the colonial masters down to the negotiation table and all that. Subsequently you had a labor movement after that, very, very powerful and also feared by successive governments. But labor has become, as we speak, their demands and all that have become very tasteless, and labor have become very bluntless. Or I could say, because I've been following labor matters for quite a while now, even before I became a journalist. We remember the time of Oshomole, when Oshomole, as at that time, when labor called, Nigeria at that time will be happy, because that was when labor was actually fighting for the cause of the Nigerian people, not just the cause of the Nigerian worker. Or about today, it has become a mere rhetoric. Because if you look at it, I'm sure Siri will agree with me on what I'm going to say, that the two dominant reason why labor goes on strike these days. Number one is that if you look at it, if you have a new executive within labor, the way you can gauge the success of a labor movement in Nigeria today is how many. Now, other light is how many successful strike action that executive embarked upon. That's the way labor is gauged these days. It's not because of anything. Once you are able to call out the labor movement, you picket some companies and all that, and everybody sits at home and all that executive has done well, not just for the sake of anything, but that executive has done well. Or not. So the other one has to do with the issue of pecuniary gain. I don't want to mention that I don't want to drag labor in the mud. So if you look at it now, and labor and TUC, they used to be one body, all of them, the Pengasan, even though they were sub bodies within labor. But today now, you are discussing with the NLC on the one hand, discussing with the TUC on the one hand. So labor's wrong have been broken, and that is why it has become very, very, very blunt. Let's say, what I mean is, okay, very blunt, I should say, but I meant very blunt. Labor have become very blunt in terms of that they are not sharp. They are not as sharp as they used to be. Labor says anything today, government is just laughing at them. That's why I was just, as Siri was struggling to even bring about a balance to his analysis. Because this government you are talking, they have, from among the labor ranks, they are not part of them. Oshomole is part of labor. Oshomole is very close to the current president. Oshomole knows all the tricks of labor. And Oshomole knows exactly where to hurt labor. Oshomole knows exactly how to make labor become even useless. That's exactly why high has become.
All
Can
right,
you
Charles.
imagine one labor?
Okay.
Yeah.
The federal government made a committee to restructure the framework for engagement with organized labor on palliatives. The 8-week time frame set for the conclusion of the process expired in August, however, with no action, determined. Now, as of yesterday, NLC and the federal government sat at that meeting, although it arrived at a deadlock. Labour is insisting that all the demands that they have asked the government to do, which the government has promised over time in previous negotiation, had not been concluded, and this time they must get it. The TUC at this time also seems to be on board with the recent action that the NLC has taken because they decided to give the government leverage. What do you think is going to happen now?
Nothing's going to happen. Labour will issue threats, and they might also. I mean, the other day they went on the 2-day warning strike. How successful that 2-day warning strike? I mean, you look at it. The Labour will go on strike. How many people are going to be? Look at the 2-day warning strike. Labour was practically picketing offices, forcing people to join them. That was not the Labour of those days. And thankfully, you are old enough to remember some of these strikes that were very successful in this country. But what I'm saying at the center of this is how successful is a labor executive. I said the only way, one of the ways to gauge that success is how many successful strike have you organized. It doesn't matter whatever, so for whatever reason. Now the reason is about the palliative and all that duties and all. So even labor itself, it's not also fought with. In those days, you could hold on to maybe a particular reason, a particular demand, maybe one central demand and a couple of others. But today, I'm talking about palliative and all that. So that's what I'm saying. That for me, I'm supposed to be on the part of labor because I'm also receiving a blow from the government. But labor is not doing this right at all. It's not.
Okay, so let's also look at this scenario with what is already at play at the moment. Joe Ajaero, as well as the Nigerian Labour Congress, actually told the government during the warning strike that if their demands are not met, they will do what they call complete downing of tools and shut down the economy. With the deadlock that was experienced yesterday, do you think that Labour would actually proceed with shutting down the economy? Also, do you think that the workers themselves are ready for that kind of strain, considering the fact that Nigerians have been experiencing serious economic hardship since from 2022 up to now? There've been no breather. Do you think that Labour would cooperate to go on with downing tools for a long period of time?
How many Nigerians are going to be queuing up behind labor? We have a fragile economy. Everybody's just scraping things up to eat. For everything about all the constraints of 1999 is just about consumption. Nobody's talking about production because where are the funds for consumption? Even the government is also struggling to breathe. So everybody's just trying to manage. The situation we are in now, even if I can get this, let me just get this and just get a little thing to pay for my school bill, a little thing for the wife to go to the market to cook and all that. That is what we are all going through. So you think that even the labor members who are just struggling to eke out a living will now join forces with government where they now be up in arms against the government and all that. I think that's why you find that each time labor goes on strike these days, they practically picket offices to compel people to join them. The labor movement in Nigeria is becoming very unpopular, and I don't know how many Nigerians, what percentage of Nigerians will want to join labor on this movement that is leading to nowhere. They want to ground the economy. Economy is almost grounded. So, and I think what government will just do is that, okay, when labor wants to do that, in order to just safeguard certain things, they just throw some things at them, maybe money also, and then you still labor will say, okay, we have accepted after 2 days of the unsuccessful strike is okay. We are still negotiating. I can tell you this, that based on the current realities of the labor movement, nothing very effective will happen. The only effective the labor movement in recent times is just ASU strike that went on for 8 months.
Interesting.
Apart from that, I can tell you that this threat will just be nothing but a threat.
All right, Cyril, let me come to you now. I would also like your response to this, Charles. No, okay, let me stay still with you on this one. Why do you think the support for labor is dwindling or has dwindled over the years? Why exactly?
So labor's atrophy, which Charles aptly referred to as beginning with the departure of Adams Oseni as NLC president, perhaps began even earlier, because a leader's departure, or what a leader leaves behind, is as good as what he did. So at the time Oshemole left, I think that some hawks within the movement staged what has been declared to be a coup of sorts, in which the succession plan was truncated, sort of. I mean, even Joe Ajerona, who is NLC president, he broke it from the NLC and from what was called the ULC,
okay,
called United Labour Congress. They were not on the same page with the NLC. This sort of fissiparous split in the Labour House does not bode well for unity and for strength, because when their numbers become when they become so divided, they're not able to hold the center cannot hold as it should have held. That's one. Then number two, if you look at the character and nature of engagement between this NLC and federal government, it leaves a lot to be desired. If the strike on Friday holds, it will be the fifth strike in about
the fifth call
in just a few months. Something is wrong.
4 months. In
4 months, something is wrong with that. I mean, in our history, how many times have you done that? That you have had this sort of strike after strike after strike after strike, 2-day warning strike, 1-day warning strike, and what has really come out of it? I thought that at the time they led that strike and protest at the National Assembly, they should have come out with something concrete. What the Senate President said was that in 7 days, all these matters will be addressed. And now what has been addressed in 7 days, or what kind of assurance did they take away that we don't know about?
Joe Ajero said there is an intermediary committee, especially from the presidency, that is meant to address this issue, and those ones haven't said anything. Do you think at this point the presidency should come in to mediate?
No, the presidency doesn't have to come in. This is why the president has appointed, in all sincerity, if we're going to follow things the way they should be done, if the Minister of Labour and Minister of State for Labour cannot address a matter as simple as this, why then should they be in office as ministers? The reality is that what we are dealing with is not an organic problem. It is inorganic. The government said it was taking away subsidy. When the president appointed Labour minister, their work was now to go and complete what the president started. So if they didn't believe in the president's policy in the first place, why did they now accept to be Minister of Labour and Minister of State? Because ultimately their work was to bring this matter to a logical conclusion. Fine. So you are taking the whole matter is very simple and straightforward. Subsidy is out of the window, and you've unified the forex windows or whatever it is, and the shortfalls or the deficits in this policy are not. The dollar has been unified. So where is the dollar? Who controls the dollar? Government. Who can mop up the dollar? Government. Who can supply the dollar? Government. Government says that banks can now go to filling station, to airport and other places, build their own exchange and whatever, and their forex, whatever, and outlets, and then people can buy and sell. Where is the dollar that they can? How many banks have gone to either Murtala Mohammed or Abuja? And I'm like, it's okay, we've come to take a space, we've come to buy a store, and want to be able to sell dollars to people. They are not there. Will they print their own dollars and sell? They will not. The issue of subsidy, government has not done the first thing to say that they want to assuage people's pains in terms of the subsidy that they decided to take away. Then number two, they have gone ahead to distribute money to states. On what? How did they arrive at that decision? How?
The governors.
Sadly,
on the way forward.
Sadly, you won't be negotiating with the governors. You negotiate with Labour. You should have carried CSOs along. Should have carried Labour along. Religious groups along. All interested parties. Okay, this is what government wants to do. What do you think? People should own the process. That's what democracy is about. People should own the process. Where we are today, federal government is the one thinking about what to do, thinking about to deal with the consequence of what they've done, as if everything they're doing is on them. It's not on them, it's on us. The so-called gas buses, where are they? Are you not surprised that the president didn't go to India to say we have a need of gas-powered buses? He didn't say that in India. Or did you hear him say that? Shetman was in Cuba for G77 something. We didn't hear him say, but I've not read any headline that said that the president is shopping for companies that can come and produce CNG buses. We've not heard them say that. So where are they coming from? It means this whole thing has been a lie.
Mr. Charles. Charles Ideho, can you hear me?
I am hearing you
All
loud
right.
and clear.
Thank you, sir. So apparently, there is this obvious distrust between the union and the government, and the union represents the people. So that distrust is there. On several occasions, when issues like this are tabled, the government always assures that something will be done about it. The labor union, after its warning strike, the government said they would look into it in-depthly. Simon Lalong asked for time to go through all the modus operandi and all the decisions that Labour have been asking the government to take concerning them. Now there was a deadlock. Please, who is not responding to the modus operandi put in place? Who is not attending to what was laid down? What is difficult for the government to actually do the needful in terms of what they have agreed on? Everything is written down on paper. Both parties are meant to come to a census. So why is the government delaying in doing that?
Okay. Well, so many things to unpack. But I would like to. I mean, the distrust is not between. Let's play on prepositions that you use.
All right. Okay.
There's no. I would say that there's distrust between the NSC and Labour. And the government.
Okay.
It is distrust and within, not between. It's within Labour.
Okay.
Okay, and I have every right to say so. For instance, you see the TUC is distancing itself from, or simply so from Labour as we speak. There are still so many people within TUC that have not forgiven even this Joe Ajero, the role he played when he divided Labour. After the exit of Oshomole, Labour came that you have Ayuba Waba led TUC, and Ajero said no, it was a strike. Kind of thing, all that. So when it was difficult for him, he pulled out and pulled some people out of Labour and formed what I can't call it is United Labour or something. I can't call the nomenclature. So Ajero was part of the problem that Labour is facing today, because he was the one who set the death knell of the Labour that we have today. He was the one who put some people out of it until you see that time, and the Ayuba Waba, the NSC, they were working together. But the very moment that Ayuba began, no, not Ayuba, what's his name, Ajero began to say no, it wasn't like that, and then he pulled out. Even when he returned, there are so many people who within the labor movement and within TUC that are not forgiving him. So that's why it seems as if he's working with Ayuba Waba today is working with very, very poor. I mean, what I say now, okay, very weak leadership. You understand what I'm saying? So government understands this, and don't also forget that government also had hand in all this disunity, all this issue of labor not being one at that time, TUC pulling out. Government is also part of it. So today, how can government negotiate with a body that doesn't seem to be united? How can government begin to negotiate with a body that does not, or seemingly so, have a clear-cut agenda of what they want? How can government negotiate with people who are they themselves? You can't see where Labour stands as we speak today. So the Labour will have to go on a cleansing, a self-cleansing movement. If Labour can have any successful or meaningful strike again, they will first of all have to undergo what is called cleansing. They have to cleanse themselves, cleanse the house, and ensure that the disunity they have within themselves, they have to all close round and become even very powerful. Then let me go on the side of government. Even the man who is the Minister of Labour and Employment today, Samuel Lalong has always been a pro-establishment person. Samuel Lalong doesn't believe in labor movement. Right? If you look at even when he was governor of Plateau State, how he also did labor over there, you see that it's not somebody who you can trust to say, okay, he's going to listen to labor and then say, okay, this is what we're going to do. So it is well chosen by government, because government knows that he's going to serve as the undertaker. You understand? So I can say that it painfully so that Labour may not be able to get out of this quagmire. It is a quagmire, it's a cul-de-sac, and I don't know how Labour is going to regulate itself. It may be shameful that at the end of the day, Labour will just be shamed out of the system, and then they become even quiet. So if anything comes out of it, maybe I might be happy. I might be happy.
Okay.
But I can say
as it is now,
Labour will not get anything out of it positive.
Well, Charles, thanks. As it is now, we know that ministers cannot make or take decisions by themselves. They still have to consult. All right. So now, let me start with Charles, and then I'd like your response to this one as we make to wrap up. Charles, what do you consider the position of the government when you look at the fact that some days ago the government appointed a 15-man ministerial committee to organize Nigeria's 63rd independence, and yet government has not been able to put together a committee to speak to labor on issues that talk about the sufferings of Nigerians, the Nigerian worker, and the common man. What do you make of this? What does this tell you? What does this tell you about the position of the federal government?
Moses, I studied English language, so please forgive me when I play on words. The choice of words is very, very important to me. When you say government has not been able, but I do not agree that government have not been able. Government has been unwilling. So choose unwilling.
Well, I say not being able because we've had Joe Ajaero complain a lot that they go for meetings and they are just there by themselves. Nobody representing the federal government would be in attendance. We've heard him say that.
Well, does that presuppose inability? That's why I say it's unwillingness. It's not inability, it's unwillingness. Government has been unwilling to set up a body because they do know that this labor you have today, they have nothing to offer. Labor you have today is not a threat to government. And government will also, see this study when he started about the disbursement of funds for palliative to state. So government on the one hand is saying, labor, what are you saying? Some of these you are saying, we are working. You can see that states are receiving money. So why don't you go back to your state chapters and ask them to dialogue with government to see what they are, governors to see what they are doing with those palliative funds. So government believes that they are already working. And so labor has nothing to talk about. So if you want us to work, you go to your respective state chapters and then go over there and do what they call do something that has to do with engagement and all that.
So Charles, are you saying that the government has been able to create a fracture within labor in order to weaken its capacity to push for its demand, meaning that at the moment, with what you have just described, the government is not afraid of labor, so labor can decide to do what it wants to do, and there'll be no repercussion?
So let me ask you a rhetorical question, but if you have an answer to it, you can answer. Now, what do you do to someone that is threatening you? Do you embolden the person that's threatening you, or you weaken the person that's threatening you? You weaken the person that's threatening you. Okay. And labor all over the world, I'm sure, even in South Africa, where labor movement is still very, 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 very fierce, government also does a lot to also weaken the ranks of labor. You go to the UK, where you also have labor. Why do you think labor movement they always come up with parties? They want to form parties. They have parties. When they engage government, they now have a party to put in government and to put in power for them to be able to say, okay, let them actualize all their demands. That's why labors all over the world, most countries, they have labor parties. Because a government that has found labor movement to be a threat to them, they will do everything possible to weaken them. So government is deliberately weakening the ranks of labor in order to make them become lame duck. That's what you're saying.
Charles, as of last month, we saw the new inflation figures. It tells you that the economy of the country has depleted. There are no jobs, and the current subsidy removal has actually crushed a couple of, small, medium enterprises. A couple of persons who would have loved to invest got dissuaded because they couldn't understand the market space. Secondly, too, market policies that were introduced by this particular government were inconsistent, and so investors couldn't really invest but to wait for the market to gauge itself. Do you think that if Labour decides to go ahead and implement a strike action, do you think that the economy at this moment can sustain it?
Well, that's an answer to your own question. There's no way this we can sustain, because as I said earlier, I'm going to also restrict it that Labour should just tread softly, because we have a very fragile economy. Just managing what to do. So if Labour goes ahead to do that, then it will just be the last nail that will be needed on the coffin of the Nigerian economy to just bury it. And of course, we all cannot afford that. So that's why Labour should find a way to engage more, not basically going on strike or taking this industrial action. There must be other creative ways for the government Labour to engage the government, so that we all don't, they don't join hands with the vagaries of the demand and supply and all that to crumble the economy. So what government should do now, I think government should start looking at how we can produce more, because there's no country in the world that consumes more than make money. Only Saudi Arabia that has the almighty petrol dollar. So, but we can't afford to go the route that Labour is trying to tread, so that we don't cause more hurt to the economy and cut more hurt to individual pockets.
Cyril Abako, when this particular minister, got his portfolio, he made statements immediately. Not just him, other ministers that were appointed with this particular administration made statements that they were going to kick the ground running. Simon Lalong was one of the persons that asked for a little bit of time to look through all Labour wanted and see how they could meet at a common ground. The action that they said they were going to implement then, why are we not seeing the action of those promises made or those statements made at the time?
The reality is very stark for anybody to see. If not for that, Labour even said that they were going to go on strike, this minister could have been looking at those documents for the next 1 year. When negotiation is civilized warfare, so you find a way to drag your opponent for as long as you can drag him until you weaken him and maybe he's out of the ring. So that could have happened. In my view, what government could have done, two things. One, since ministers have been nominated without portfolios, as soon as they pass the Senate screen, you should have shared documents, summaries of everything you've done with Labour to everybody. Since you didn't know who was going to get what. All of you, Wike, Lalong, Edu, Edun, and so on. All of you study so that if Labour falls to you, you'll be able to hit the ground running. That's one. Then number two, from the very day the president inaugurated them and said, you're going to be Minister of Labour, I do not think that the Labour minister needed all the time in the world. I mean, this is something that has been ongoing. We've been seeing what has been happening. A briefing of a week should have taken care of it. And then if government really meant well to discuss the Labour, they could have said, okay, this is our position, call them. It's not even about they want to go, call them. Government never calls Labour unless there's a strike threat. Call them. Sit with them and because this was where we left off. There was even a technical committee that was supposed to be discussing with Labour. Is he taking over the notes from the presidency or from the committee? Because if the committee was in place, then now that should have made this work even much easier. But as it is right now, they always put Labour in a place where strikes are inevitable. It was only Pascal Bafia, who was Labour leader under Babangida, that never really wanted to go on strike. The Labour leaders were telling him, how can you be effective without going on strike? And the man said, look, Babangida is my friend, anything I want is given to us, including a Labour secretariat, which today is called Pascal Bafia House, So that is it. If you're able to get what it is you want from government, all good, but when they won't give you, the only language government understands is strike. Look at doctors, resident doctors, who will have to remind federal government to pay them their salaries, what's it called, the so-called MRTF. They have to remind them to pay them through strike. Because if you don't go on strike, the fact is that you won't get anything. But where government has already decided to do palliative the way they've done, I think that what now left for Labour to discuss with the federal government is the issue of minimum wage.
So are we saying now that with the body language of the government due to most of these demands and its action whereby until there is a threat before they respond, are we saying it's a deliberate action of the government to frustrate its people?
Esther, are we new to what is going on in this country? Are we new to it? Let's even ask us. In the case of the resident doctors, when money is released from federal government and the monies don't get paid to the doctor until after a year, where are those monies being kept? Has anybody bothered to go and investigate? Isn't it even criminal that morally reprehensible that a government will initiate a policy and not be willing to take responsibility for the policy that it initiated? Isn't it even a question mark on the government? So whatever the case, I think that for government, if they can get away with this subsidy thing, just like that, I think they will go for it. But the good thing is Labour is there to put them in check and to make demands. If they are not able to check this, to demand and get what it is they want from government, then I mean we are in for it and we are done for it. Transport costs continue to go high, food prices continue to skyrocket, rent, electricity bills, everything is on the increase. Yesterday, a story came out that cooking gas price was going to go up to as much as 18,000 naira for the 12.5 kg. Not the supply of gas to the terminals, to the terminals has a problem. But the terminal operators are afraid that the rise in the dollar could affect their business. So this is where we are. If anybody sits down and thinks that they can get away with everything and anything by keeping quiet and saying that for as long as we are quiet and nothing happens, then we are free. I don't think you can be free for long. Government should, I believe by now that federal government already has the figure it wants to pay for minimum wage. I don't think it's more than 50,000 naira. I don't think so. What TUC said was 200,000 and the TUC was 150, I think. 200,000. Labour said 150. The NCC said 150. Now I don't even know whether the federal government has agreed to pay workers under TUC 200,000. That's making TUC to say for them they want to study the situation first. Perhaps Ajero is not motivated enough to study the situation, and we don't know. But we hope that in another month or two, this matter is completely trashed and taken off the table, so that we can move on with our lives. You took subsidy away, it's fine, but how about the consequence of subsidy? We must deal with that.
All right, this is how far we can stretch this part of the show. Up next on VOP this morning, we might have to keep Charles.
You did her with us.
We just might have to keep Charles for a little bit longer, but Siri will have to excuse you on this one. All right, up next on VOP this morning. Well, the past 1 week hasn't exactly been a happy one for the family of the late Nigerian singer Ilerioluwa Aloba, popularly known as Mohbad, who passed on at an untimely age of 27. Well, he has joined what they call the 27 Club. There is a club. Yes. We'll talk about that one later. Well, let's serve you the whole story in just a moment when we come back after this break.